Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one yet again based on one of your new suggestions. This one having to do with a mysterious encounter with an animal that was apparently seen flying in the sky a good number of years back. When I was reading this information, I will mention this up front, there's a lot of dubious info associated with it, lots of anonymity in other words, so you'll know about that more here in just a moment. So take this story with a little bit of grain of salt, but otherwise it's a fascinating encounter. This apparently occurred somewhere there in West Virginia. It's a one-off encounter as well, and in fact you're looking at a representation of it here. It has a very unique name too. It was known as the White Horse of the Winds. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here, and then I'll give my thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear of those of you that are in the West Virginia area. Let me know on a local level if you've heard any more information associated with it. So here's what happened. You would have to go back to July 8th, 1878. Wow, that's a good while back, right? In order to first hear about this encounter. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that this was the date associated with it. This was when it was actually reported. But if you go by the notion that the report states that the time period also occurred in July, again, you're just going to have to take that with a little grain of salt. But apparently this happened in a West Virginia area, a town by the name of Parkersburg. Some of you, again, on the local level, let me know more info below. And this happened at an anonymous location within that town. So here's what occurred. This was about 7 p.m. on one afternoon there in July of 1878. And then no known specific time period, like when it comes to the date itself, but just around that time. And then that's where, at a location that again remains unknown, there was a farmer that was just doing his usual work. It must have still been, even though it's 7 p.m., there was still daylight out there, because he decided to look up from his regular manual labor, and then that's when he saw something like this. He stated that he saw there was a opaque substance, something that was about a half a mile away, that was moving towards him in a westerly direction. What's interesting to note is that, again, this was at a time when there was still daylight, and it was notably cloudless, so there wasn't any things in the sky that would misinterpret his point of view. No, what he was looking at was out in the broad daylight, out in clear skies. He was seeing this thing. And as he saw it come closer, that's when he realized his eyes were not deceiving him. He was actually looking at what was a purported white horse. A white horse, just like you would imagine any other horse. It had the white fur associated with it, and then it had the usual features tied to a horse. In fact, he clearly stated that its anatomy was quote-unquote clearly defined, and the way it moved was very interesting as well. The way horses swim, for example, if you ever see a clip of a horse swimming in the water, that's how essentially it was going through that clear sky. So he was looking at it, it was kicking its legs, it was almost like it was swimming in the air. It was even moving its neck side to side, as if those motions were somehow pulling it through the air, up in the sky. Who knows how, but it was happening. What's also notable is that there were no wings linked to it as well. Even then, of course, that would still be something else just far off to consider, but one would think that a flying animal would have some kind of wings as well, but this particular horse did not. After a little bit of moments, he decided, you know what, let me get some of the other people nearby to take a look at this too, just to make sure that he was not dreaming. And so there were some local farmers that were there as well, about 100 yards away, and he called out to them. They came over, he told them to look up, and then that's when they could see that very, very same thing that he was looking at. What's also interesting to note is that those two farmers, once they realized what they were looking at, they became quote-unquote badly frightened. In some cases, I would imagine that being the situation. You see something otherworldly like this, even though it looks like a innocent type horse, you don't necessarily think that it's going to be something good just because of the unusual nature of it. So they were a little bit frightened of it, but he in turn, the original nameless farmer, was still amazed amazed by it. He was just seeing this animal. In fact, at one point, he decided to sit himself down, and then he was there just watching in awe as this white flying horse came across their area. And again, it was still about good, size or so away from them up in the sky, but it was still not too far away. But at a certain point, it was getting far away because it had then passed them, it had moved through the air, and then it went off in the other direction, and they all just pretty much kept looking, particularly that nameless farmer, the primary one, up until it went off into the distance, and then it just simply vanished. And then when that occurred, that was it. That was the one-off encounter associated with this white horse of the wind. So what a strange day, right? On July 8th, 1978, when this report happened, it stated that sometime in July of the same year at this nameless location there in the town of Parkersburg, that's where these three farmers saw this creature. Who knows where it came from? Who knows what its purpose was as well? Why on earth was it flying too? You don't picture horses necessarily having that kind of capability, right? Even I don't think movies go along that line. Who knows? But either way, though, there's this thing suddenly there in front of them, and then all of a sudden it's moving. It's with a graceful, almost swimming-like pattern, and then it's gone. It's gone from their location, never ever to be seen again. So even after all these years, there's still lots of mystery associated with it, but no clearer answers. And unless this thing decides to make its presence known again in the West Virginia area, we're pretty much left as baffled as when it first started. There is one potential close link. This actually happened back in 2014. You would have to go to an area there in Saudi Arabia, right over the city of Mecca. There was an incident that occurred on November 23rd, 2014, involving a thunderstorm. As this thunderstorm was happening, some people actually witnessed this. They apparently saw a dark shape moving about through those clouds. It was apparently unfazed at whatever was occurring with the thunderstorm. And it looked exactly like a horse. Like, again, just like the situation involving the white horse of the winds. There it was up in the sky. This time, though, instead of it being like a cloudless, daylit sky, this was more along the lines of a thunderstorm. But there it was, just pretty much going into the air. And then people, of course, were just freaking out on the bottom because of what they were witnessing. And in this case, the horse just pretty much started and ended and disappeared without any answer as to why it was there, why there was a flying horse over Mecca. Nobody had any other occurrences as well. This was just like the other one, just one single one-off, and then never ever to be seen again. Why it was on a thunderstorm, of all things as well, who knows with regards to that info too. But if anybody has any more information, please let me know. Those of you maybe in the Parkersburg area, maybe if you've had some kind of generations of family that have passed down other local tales or lore associated with this white horse of the winds, let me know. All in all, I think that it would be quite a beautiful sight to see something like that, to see a horse as beautiful as they are already. Imagine it flowing through the air as well. That would be just an amazing sight. I'll probably be in awe as well. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.